Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman. A few years ago, I wrote and performed a solo show called The Edge of Every Day, which was an exploration of the rough edges and contradictions we all face and grapple with. The show hit a nerve, and the relevance of the topic would only grow over time, more than I could have foreseen. So, here we are. Real talk with real people, sharing stories and perspectives that spark provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. We are live in the Hive. And thank you for joining me on this, the 17th episode of The Edge of Every Day, here on TalkRadio.NYC. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, and for those of you who don't know me yet, I encourage you to check out my bio on TalkRadio.NYC, or of course you can visit my website, sandrabargman.com, or tune into any of my previous episodes. In a nutshell, this show is about celebrating triumphs, pushing boundaries, and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we're resistant to change, those places where paradoxes and contradictions live in our beliefs and our understandings, both about ourselves and about the world around us. Those places we don't want to look. Listen, we live in turbulent times, and we are coming to understand that life isn't black or white. It must be an embrace of both. And the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So thanks again for tuning in. And without further ado, it's time to introduce our guest this evening. Joan Michelson, MBA, is an award-winning creative business and communications leader, journalist, public speaker, career transition coach, and creator, executive producer, and host of the podcast Electric Ladies, formerly known as Green Connections Radio. A specialist in the green space and a lifelong advocate for women in leadership, Joan's work has included Chrysler's Global Electric Motorcars, the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Energy Alliance Small Business Partnership, Earth Day Network, the top green private equity firm Global Environment Fund, and the National Council for Science and the Environment. As a highly regarded journalist, Joan is published across media platforms, including in Forbes, HuffPost, TheAtlantic.com, The New Economy magazine, Green Biz, ABC News, 60 Minutes, CBS News, and many others. Her acclaimed podcast series, Green Connections Radio, was chosen by USA Today as one of the top 6 podcasts. Joan interviews movers and shakers in business, government, journalism, academia, the arts, and nonprofits focused on innovations in energy and sustainability, mostly women, and has been nominated for the prestigious White House Champion of Change Award and the C3E Award, all in 2015. A dynamic public speaker, Joan has addressed many business, professional, green economy, and women's conferences and events nationwide. This month is Women's History Month, and tomorrow, March 8th, is International Women's Day. The theme of Women's History Month this year is providing healing, promoting hope. And I've chosen 4 women for my 4 Monday night conversations on the Edge of Every Day this month that do just that. Provide healing and promote hope. 4 women committed to the upliftment and advancement of other women. And I am thrilled to kick off all of that with Joan Michelson. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to be
Oh,
here. I'm complimented to be on your show. So
oh,
thank you.
well, I'm thrilled that you said yes. I'm thrilled to have you. I'm thrilled to share your work with our listeners, your incredible work, your unbelievable tendrils and accomplishments, and trying to fit that all into 1 hour
You're
radio
so
show
sweet.
is quite a feat. We're gonna see if we do it. So let's dive in. So to begin with, because it's Women's History Month, I've asked Joan to share. She's just published to Forbes Women, their online blog, an incredible article that celebrates the women making history today, the women of Ukraine. So if you can share a little bit about that article, we can give our thanks to these women, our gratitude, and we can light our candles in prayer. So share a little bit about that article and where people can find it.
Well, I'm privileged to write for Forbes, and I write on women, particularly in the energy, sustainability, climate, corporate responsibility space. And full disclosure, my maternal grandparents were from Ukraine. They were born in Ukraine and came to the United States as small children, escaping the Russian pogroms in the early 1900s. And my paternal grandparents are from Latvia and Lithuania. So, needless to say, I have a personal connection to the atrocities going on in Ukraine perpetrated by Russia right now. And at the same time, I can't help but notice that there are extraordinary women doing what you just described, providing healing and promoting hope. And they're doing it in really creative ways. And by the way, all the women that I interview on my show, and they're all women except a handful of men I interviewed in the beginning, are doing that too. And that's what I love about innovation. It's creating the kind of innovation that I talk about is positive innovation. It's making things better. And the women that I highlighted in my story today are come from an array of perspectives. Linda Thomas Greenfield, of course, at the United Nations, Ambassador Oksana Marakova, who is the ambassador from the Ukraine, who got the standing ovation, extended bipartisan standing ovation at the State of the Union address. Yeah, truly extraordinary. And then I also highlighted the Undersecretary for Nuclear Energy, since the nuclear facility was attacked, and the women highlighting the developing the sanctions, because we forget Janet Yellen is Secretary of the Treasury. Okay, we have the first female Secretary of the Treasury, and then I also highlighted the women experts in Russian history and Putin who have been counseling multiple presidents for years, and frankly, it's my own prism, but the journalists as well, because these are women who are putting themselves in harm's way to make sure that the truth gets out. And they are telling hopeful stories as well as the difficult ones.
Yes.
And they're just an array of amazing people, including, of course, the women in the refugee camps who are helping these people who are traumatized on every level try to find some level of comfort in a strange land with no resources.
Truly, and the women who have jumped in to the war effort with rifles and no previous background in this. It's just been mind-blowing. So both Joan and I have lit our candles and Dylan, our wonderful technician, have lit a candle tonight for the people of Ukraine and the people around the world. This, you can't really see it because of my backdrop, but it does, my green screen, because it says, actually you might be able to, it says freedom. So we light a candle for them, for your ancestors, Joan, for people around the world. And so it is.
And so it is, and so it shall be.
Amen. Whew. So
the reason that I wanted, I just want to say this, the reason that I wanted to highlight them in this auspicious time is because they are making history. They are transition. They're making positive history from catastrophe, and they're bringing healing directly, and they are making history, and they're trying to change history's trajectory.
Certainly more women in the geopolitical understanding than I've ever seen. And,
yes, exactly.
It's just incredible.
Exactly. And these are the women whose stories I tell. And in fact, in also full disclosure, my great aunt, her brother was born in Poland, but she was born in the United States. My great aunt was a renowned reporter at the turn of the century. And she was one of the few female reporters. And sorry, this is my copy, which is pretty beaten up at this point.
Which everyone, I've ordered today.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you for an autograph.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. We could deliver it, and then I can actually meet you. That would be exciting.
That would be swell.
But Aunt Miriam was quite a pistol, darling. I mean, she would fit right in with us. She was a reporter who helped literally get the 19th Amendment ratified. Now, she even gave directions to the readers, the women who were reading her columns and her articles, on where to go to connect with the movement.
Yes. Kept it on the front pages, kept people engaged. Now, she transitioned, from what I've read, she transitioned or continued with her journalism, and also she got into more fiction writing, using her incredible journalistic talent, with apparently a great ear for a great, obviously as a journalist, you have to have a great ear for a story, but that's not the same. It's not the same kind of writing. So apparently she was able to weave it in with some pop culture, and wrote, what was the name of the
Superwoman? The
Superwoman. And this was a book we can trace to modern day Wonder Woman.
It was considered source material for Wonder Woman comics. She also, by the way, to tie in with your background, she wrote plays. And one of her plays was made into a movie, and her plays were about women in the Senate before there were any women in the Senate.
Oh my Lord. Absolutely incredible. So the name of the book is The Superwoman, and it has a foreword written by you, the wonderful Joan Michelson, by her great aunt, Miriam Michelson, who had two apparently journalism and telling incredible stories and uplifting people is in your DNA. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. And she was so renowned that when her brother won the Nobel Prize, he was introduced as her brother. And this is 1907, people. So this is like not yesterday. Yeah. Imagine what the world was like.
Well, that's an incredible story and an incredible place for us to take our first break. And when we come back, we will dive in to Joan's podcast, The Electric Ladies, among many other topics. So stay tuned. The Edge of Every Day.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in.
I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rains, but it pours
on the edge of every day. And we are back with Electric Lady Joan Michelson. So we have a lot to talk about. Your podcast, your journalism, how you've gotten into the climate movement, ESG economy. What is it and why does it matter? Edge walking, entrepreneurism, and innovation. So I have a quote that is going to set up you telling the story about the most recent interview you did for your podcast, which I got to hear about this morning. And in our pre-conversation, it's just mind-blowingly beautiful. So here's the quote. I can promise you that women working together, linked, informed, and educated, can bring peace and prosperity to this forsaken planet. Isabel Allende, who was a novelist and speaker and wrote about women's lives. So tell us the story about this incredible interview that you had this very morning and just published to your podcast.
So I went to the huge UN climate conference in Glasgow in November.
COP26. Yeah.
COP26, and me and 30,000 of my best friends from all over the world. And it was extraordinary, overwhelming, inspiring, incredible. And I wrote about that too in Forbes, and I interviewed several people there. And one of the people that I connected with when I was there, but I did not have a chance to actually interview, is this woman named Rosemary Atieno, who is from Women's Climate Centers International. And she also has her own entity called COMPE, Cooperation. Anyway, it's Women's Empowerment Through Positive Thinking. And Positive Empowerment, I believe, is the P and the E. And when I heard about her, I was determined to interview her because she's doing something that is kind of the epitome of what Electric Ladies is about. She's transforming entire communities and individual lives by helping them find eco-conscious solutions to daily problems in rural Africa. So these women who have, for example, she told me the story of a community that was having a spike in cholera. And she tracked it down to the fact that the homes did not have adequate water, potable water, clean water, and the various systems around that. So where in Western nations, we would say, well, we need a filter, or we would need this big contraption, whatever. She just gets down to where they are. Start with where you are. Like, what stream do you go to, and where do you get your water from tonight?
Yes.
And then she ultimately, make a very long story short, you could listen to it, airs at 7:30 tomorrow morning on Electric Ladies podcast. But she talks about how that problem, solving that problem, and the way that they helped create some simple solutions, transformed the entire community, built new businesses. The woman whose problem it was built a new house. Her husband is now working for her, and everybody is healthy, and cholera went away in the community. It went from like the equivalent of 100 to 0.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, literally. Quite literally. And it's just amazing. And it all started with, and she's teaching them. So think about this, in the process, they're learning, and most of these people are illiterate. So they're becoming literate. They're learning to read and write.
The basics.
They're
Just the
learning
basics of
English.
life.
Exactly. They're learning English and Swahili. They're in Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Uganda. They're learning business skills. They're learning all kinds of business skills, and they're boosting their confidence and going back to school.
And solving climate issues.
And purifying the water, reducing their carbon footprint. They were using horrible firewood that was polluting the air, that was horrible. And she figured out how to help them get energy in a sustainable way and freed up their time. And that was the other thing with the water solution, was it freed up the women's time. Instead of having to go to the lake to get water, dirty water from a dirty lake, she figured out a way to help them figure out a way, so that then all of a sudden they had all this free time because they didn't have to go to the lake. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. I mean, it's just, this is healing and hope personified. This is, I love your framing of the edge of every day, because this is taking an everyday problem, finding the edge of it,
yes,
and solving that edge. And it just creates a bouquet of roses.
Indeed.
Magical innovation that transforms entire lives and communities and economies, and saves the planet in the process. I mean, wow.
Well, and I remember, I don't know which one of the many plethora of things I listened to, but that's something that you touched on over and over again, was that how am I paying attention to the problem where I am, which really hit home for me. You know, that your story right now and in these other places that I heard it hit home for me, particularly post-COVID, when we have really been thrown into how am I connecting to my in my face community, and what are the steps that I need to take to solve these issues.
So, there's something I want to pull out here, which you and I didn't talk about before, but I'm going to do it now anyway. And that is the impact of COVID. And one of the things that I wrote about, and I ended up doing some speaking about as well, and some workshops, is, so many people on the planet were complaining about being lonely and spending too much time alone.
Isolation, yeah.
So I flipped it over and I talked about the gifts of solitude. Now, you and I are creative people, so that's our natural instinct, is to just go create. But what I did was I helped people think about getting to know who they are in their solitude, getting to read books they never read, or do things that they hadn't done before, and enjoy. I mean, people would say to me, I'm taking more walks outside now than I ever did, and it's gorgeous, and I never really appreciated it before. I'm one of the women I interviewed finished her PhD. She'd been trying to do for years. I know people who finished books and did all kinds of things and turned their in-person event into a hybrid, part in-person and online event. There are people who I had been invited in communities to go to events in person, but I couldn't go to because they were in California or whatever. I'm on the East Coast, or even Australia and Malaysia. Now I could be with them all the time because everybody's online.
Yeah.
And so it's finding that positive
silver
place.
lining.
Yeah. And it sounds kind of trite, but it's more than that, because it's nurturing who you are and finding your voice on a different level. That's, to me, is more profound, and self-discovery.
Well, I think, some people thrived, and I think some other people went kicking and screaming and eventually got there. Because that's the overall message of COVID, that there was no getting away from. I will be polished by this. I may not want to be. Some of us are going to dive in and use that time beautifully. Others of us are going to scream and yell, but eventually we too will be polished. I do believe that is. And certainly I know in my circle, everyone has been called forward and been polished, and came to realize some things about themselves during this time, that having been forced to sit in it, that they've never known.
Exactly. And, they couldn't just run to go to dinner, what they ate, what they, exercise, everything.
And it distracted themselves with. They had
Yeah,
to sit in it.
Yeah, and you mentioned ESG. I wrote about this as well. I think the one of the most profound shifts from COVID and the convergence of COVID and climate and the reemergence of the social justice movements was this shift in companies and really everything. And now it's become a geopolitical strategy into this space of ESG. E is environment, S is social, G is governance. And governance is basically accountability, reporting, metrics, holding people accountable for enforcing. Yeah, exactly. And so what happened during COVID was what had been an interesting investment strategy that was kind of on the side, a little niche, became foundational. I did stories on the fact that ESG rated stocks outperformed the market during COVID and continue to. But it became necessary that companies and organizations had to focus on environment in terms of, hey, we now have clean air because nobody's driving and flying. Right. Hey, we need to look at the environment of where we work. I mean, the workplace will never be the same, right?
Oh, no.
And obviously
nothing will ever be the same.
No, and obviously social is diversity, but it's also how you treat everybody in your world. It's suppliers, customers, any kind of stakeholders, your community that you're in, as well as the making sure you have diversity on your board, et cetera. And so that was the other profound paradigm shift that was, it became a more caring, a more, an economy more driven by people and planet than just by profit.
And you wrote speaking of Forbes, you wrote another fantastic article about how not that I want to get back into the war again, but it has helped us understand this ESG, and again, to put a bow on that, E, environment, S, social, G, governance. And our understanding, all of us, for those of us, this might be a new phrase for you, getting on board with how that economy shows up in the world and how that's really emerging. And Joan does exquisite work on that. We've got 2 more minutes left.
So I just want to tie that up and to explain what you referred to. So what I wrote is that the strategy for dealing with the attack on Ukraine, is really an ESG strategy, because it's the environment of where these people are, and it's the environment in terms of Europe is now transitioning to clean energy on the turn of a dime. They had it in process, and they are like, I mean, they've literally flipped switches. Okay.
I'm sure.
And I interviewed
all of these people at COP26 that probably talked about it, but now they're there.
That's right. And everything, and they're speeding up everything. I interviewed a woman from who's a co-president of the Club of Rome, which is all world leaders. It's amazing. And then you obviously have the social component and the accountability, the enforcement, the sanctions, the holding everyone accountable for their behavior. Yeah. It's really profound. It's changed everything.
Indeed it has. Well, that's a perfect time for us to take our next break. So when we come back with Joan Michelson, we will get into how she went from her journalism and business work and had the fire lit to move into the green community, and how she then started this wonderful podcast, The Electric Ladies. When we come back with Joan Michelson on The Edge of Everyday, stay tuned.
I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on TalkRadio.NYC every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who will expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.NYC. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on TalkRadio.NYC.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc, now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours
on the edge of every day, and we are back with Joan Michelson. Okay, so you had, again, we need 3 hours to talk about all the wonderful things you've done. So you were in broadcast journalism, and you moved into more corporate journalism, as you called it, and then made your transition into the green space. Tell us how that happened.
So I spent most of my career really writ large, all of it bouncing back and forth between corporate communications, marketing, and journalism. And I had worked at Deloitte and American Express and doing management consulting and worked with some smaller firms. And then I also did, as you mentioned earlier, TV, worked at 60 Minutes and TV news magazine shows and other media. And then kind of from Mars, I was offered an opportunity to head up, I was here in DC, to head up communications and co-head the sales and marketing of the electric car division of Chrysler. That's the global electric motor cars you mentioned. I didn't own a car at the time. I didn't live there. I'd never worked in the car business. The word vehicle or automotive was nowhere in my resume. In fact, I don't even think they ever saw my resume. I met someone at a luncheon who I was talking to. I didn't know who I was talking to till later, turned out to be the president of the division, who the next morning called me and said, "Are you happy?" and started recruiting me. And drum roll, please, move this New York City born and bred check to, brace yourself, everybody, Fargo, North Dakota. Oh, yes, it was cold. The weather was brutal, but you know what? It was the best job of my life in many ways, changed my life forever. I fell in love with the industry because think about it. It's amazingly smart people doing really cool things that are making the world a better place. They're making money at it with integrity. Yes. And they're having fun. Like, what's wrong? What could be possibly wrong? And so I got catapulted into meeting all these amazing people, whether they were in nonprofits or government or entrepreneurs or the big Fortune 500 companies. And I've been in the space ever since. And so then when my division was sold and Chrysler blew up and my division was sold, I came back to DC. And I was doing journalism and public speaking and some consulting. And somebody came up to me at an event and said, "I'd like you to do a radio show on our network." And I'd been thinking about shows. I mean, I'm a creator, I'm a producer. I'm always you don't want to see the list of ideas that I have. So I initially for years, I called it Green Connections Radio. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want to genderize it, even though I was going to interview 90% women. And I have since gone to 100% women. And I went back and forth about it, but I did it as Green Connections Radio initially. And then last October, just a few months ago, I mean, I'd been thinking about rebranding for a while. This was one of my projects during COVID, was I rebranded my show to Electric Ladies Podcast, decided to own the girl thing, and completely designed a whole new website and did everything new, which is a major task, but it was fun and it was great. And I'm really glad. And so I call it Electric Ladies for many reasons, which are also on my website, electricladiespodcast.com. But those reasons, just really quickly, are the things that you and I have been talking about, which is that women find creative solutions and supercharge results. Obviously, we're covering electricity and energy, that electricity and energy are innovation tools that grow economies and create jobs and solve problems, making the world a better place. Mm. And so that's how I got into this space. And then by doing the journalism and the podcast, and I would get invited to speak, I get invited to write, I get invited to, gee, can you help me with X? I do a lot of writing on ESG. So companies come to me and say, we're doing this ESG thing, can you help? Yada, yada. And so it just evolved. And because I write a lot about careers, people come to me and say, you've written about blah, blah, blah. Can you help me? And it evolves. And so I love it because it's working with people who are all in this purpose-focused space.
Yes. Of
finding solutions that, to your theme, are providing healing and hope.
Well, and it also, you and I spoke about the edge walking and the entrepreneurship and how all your thought process, all of the ways that you work, and all of the ways, it was instrumental. This quality that you have was instrumental at Chrysler. They bring in somebody that did you even know how to drive?
Oh, I love to drive. I learned to drive in New York City, Sandra.
Oh, okay. So
I think
you were mean on the streets.
Yes, I just didn't own a car at the time, but I find that I think people who learn to drive in New York City should have a special driver's license. But there you have it.
I agree.
It's my bias.
But anyway. But yes, this ability to live at the edge of the edge walk, as I call it, and of innovation, of connecting systems and understandings. Speak to us about that work within the Chrysler, within your podcast, and within the work that you're doing now. How are you an entrepreneur, and how are you an edge walker?
Well, one of the things that I discovered is a gift that I have, and it took me a while to call it that. One of my clients calls it, we all have superpowers, right? Is I have an ability to connect dots that other people haven't seen connect, and to then develop and execute a strategy that connects them in a way that creates exponential results. Mm. So, for example, at Chrysler, I developed partnerships with organizations that initially my boss, who was the president of the division, completely thought I was nuts. He was like, what? How's this going? And when we did them, we ended up creating massive exponential results because it brought together it leveraged the multidimensionality of what everybody was bringing to the table. So I create these multi-dimensional partnerships, and we got parking spaces for electric vehicles in the front, like you have handicap spaces. We got legislation passed to allow these cars on the streets, which, believe it or not, they aren't everywhere. All these different things that ultimately helped grow our sales. Yes. But they made things better for everybody and increased the adoption of electric vehicles, which reduces the carbon footprint and helps save the planet.
Yes. Win.
And by the way, one of the strategies I used was going to women car buyers. Because if you look at the research, people say, oh, men over 55 and up buy cars and they're blah, blah, blah. No, if you actually look at the data, if it's a couple, first of all, more women are buying cars now themselves. But if they look at the data, what happens is in a couple, the person who's doing the survey, or they get a survey and they'll say, I talk to the person who buys the car, they'll hand it to the husband. But what really happens is the wife says, here, honey, here's 5 cars I'll drive, pick one. Who's picking the car?
More brilliant moves by women. Knowing how to walk the edges brilliantly. Oh my God, I love that so much. Okay, so we have a comment here from Cassidy Jerzak.
Oh.
Jerzak. I hope I'm pronouncing that, Cassidy, properly. Hi, Joan. I was wondering what your most favorite job you've ever had.
Oh, wow. Well, there's so many. I mean, I love what I do now, to be honest. I love working with people. But
I can't imagine you, of all people, choosing one.
yeah, no, obviously working at 60 Minutes was extraordinary. Okay, let's just say that. Chrysler was really cool because I had the latitude and the internal support to really make things happen. And even though I was living in brutal, barbaric weather, I shouldn't use the word barbaric at the moment, but anyway, I used to joke that they should trade places with the polar bears. I was using my skills in a way where I was I'll tell you a quick funny story. So the president of the company would walk into the door jamb of his office and he'd just look up and he'd go, uh-oh, there she is. Okay, I know you're here to take me out of my comfort zone. Give me a minute. Put his hands on the arms of his chair. He goes, okay, try me. And I'd come in with some crazy idea and he'd go, what? I go, Rick, it's not going to cost you anything. I got the dealers doing blah, 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 and we're going to blah, 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 blah. And he'll go, okay. And we did enough of those. And then we get on the cover of the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, or we get in Time Magazine. I had a reporter for Time Magazine driving our car around New York City, including Central Park, for 4 hours.
Oh my.
And they did a video of it and aired it on the website with a whole story, big spread in Time Magazine. And he's like, how did you get from, I go, it's Rick, it's okay. We did a methane-free Christmas, delivering toys without the reindeer. He really thought I'd flipped my lid when I did that one. But it went viral like nobody's business. It was like the greatest, the hot thing on Yahoo and Google and whatever. And he's like, this is so why? And I go, Rick, it's okay. So, that I think that was my favorite because I had support, I had resources to do stuff, and we were making the world a better place, doing creative stuff and generating real metrics with cool people.
Yeah. What a gift to have had that. I mean, so many of us would just love to have that kind of unbridled support and respect for being able to think in that way.
Yeah. And it kind of goes to something that you and I have talked about and a bit around tonight, and that is work from where you are. Right. Some people would say to me, oh, I can't really reduce the carbon footprint of my campus because there's so many obstacles. And I go, you can get electric vehicles for the campus facilities. Here you got tax credits, you got, the funding from the government, from these acts, whatever, that makes a difference. And I go, oh,
yeah. Check out what's available. What's even, what they even have on the table at all. And maybe you're just asking starts the ball rolling.
Well, that's true.
Starts the ball rolling.
Exactly. And I find I have coaching clients who come to me and say, well, I want to work in the green economy, so I have to quit my job and look at a nonprofit or whatever. And I go, no, you don't. You can, start a green club where you are, or talk to them about using recycled paper, or talk about the recycling program, or get involved in volunteer. I mean, you don't know what else is going on at your company that you might be able to do.
Well, we're going to talk more about that. We're going to go to break, and we will continue with Joan's coaching, her many faceted coaching that she does when we come back on The Edge of Every Day with Joan Michelson. Stay tuned.
Join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern for The Mind Behind Leadership, where we focus on what leadership really means to us and to others. We have practical discussions with the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies, owners of small businesses, and experts in psychology and behavior to get that inside track, what to do, how to do, what really happens. Join me, Graham Dobbin, at the new time, 4 p.m. every Tuesday for the Mind Behind Leadership here live on TalkRadio.NYC.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.NYC, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.NYC.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at TalkRadio.NYC.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rains, but it pours on the edge of every day.
And we are back with Joan Michelson on the edge of every day. So I have a quote to move into, and a quick little story to move into your coaching. The quote is an Amelia Earhart quote, so perfect for the coaching clients. The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity.
Mm.
So true. So I heard, listening to the multitudinous number of things that I did in my research of you, I just loved how you it goes on and on, people. Just goes on and on. I really loved how you worked with your coaching clients and the young people in your life and just sharing what advice you would give. For instance, when I was a dean of first-year students at the seminary through which I was ordained, I had students that would come to me and want to consider changing jobs because they wanted something that was more spiritual. And I would ask them, what is that? What does that mean? And, and of course it would get down to something that quite literally looked more spiritual, like potentially having moving into a position where you spoke a lot in front of a congregation, et cetera, maybe a massage job, whatever that might be, but it looked more stereotypical. And I said, but everything, you can have a spiritual, bring a spiritual depth and understanding to any job. And quite frankly, that's what these communities and systems need, is your depth and understanding and spiritual awakening within those systems. It made me think of that story when I listened to you talk about overlaying this lens of, wait a second, you can go out, you can turn any place that you are. Well, I'll let you talk to it. I'll let you pick that up there because your coaching is transitional and it's also book. So you'll connect those two and tell us how you work with your clients.
So what I do is I focus on obviously what's coming up for them at the moment that is causing them to reach out to a coach of any kind. Yeah. And what I do is I listen to that and I make a bazillion notes. I'm a copious note taker, obviously. And I write down keywords that they're using, or words that they're using that pop up for me. They might not be key to them, but they're illustrative or they resonate. Listening. Yeah. And then I have a process that I go through with my clients, but even in what I'll call a mini mentoring moment, I'll say, well, what parts of you do you want to give a voice to now? Because we evolve. And I don't frame it as young people versus whatever people. I mean, we're all going through transitions. I mean, I talk to some people who say, well, I don't know. I don't want to go to grad school yet because I don't know what I want to do, whatever. It's like, you're going to change careers every 5 years or something. So give that up really quickly, right? And
in today's world.
but especially in today's world. But it's also actually it's a good thing because we evolve as humans. We get mastery on something, or we discover that we don't like something, or we get to the been there, done that part, and we want to, do something else. We want to use another part of who we are. And so it's not just, do I have to quit working for Procter & Gamble because I want to do something more sustainable or more purpose-driven? It's, well, what can you do in your job today? And how can you reframe what you're doing today so that it serves this internal need that you have? And you know what? Your organization may have opportunities for you to play in that sandbox that you don't even know about. Have you talked to your boss about it? Have you talked to your HR department about it? Have you checked out all of the different myriad divisions of these big companies? I had one coaching client who'd been trying to build an innovation unit at her big mother company, Fortune 10 company, I think, actually, and finally got an opportunity to do so. And she was frustrated because they weren't giving her the title of head of the unit. And I'm like, you're building the unit, you're hiring everybody, you're developing the vision, you're developing the purpose, you're doing it.
Yeah.
Whether, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to get you the compensation and whatever eventually, but you're doing it. So why don't you just do it and create the image that you want? And she wanted to do it. I met her at an energy conference. So she's an energy innovator. And so it's that kind of thing. It's like, look at what's in front of you and what the assets are, internal assets. And I'm not just talking about what kind of car you drive. I'm talking about what are your internal assets and what are the assets in your network? And what can you create? And one of the ways that I do help people build their brand in whatever this new way they want to express themselves is by writing and putting out content on the web. And that can be for free at LinkedIn or Medium, for example. A lot of people say, I want to do a podcast. And I'm like, you don't know how much work it is. So let's not talk about that. But sometimes I hear in their speaking or in their portfolio of work that they've created that there's a book. And so I've ended up helping people, I've become a book coach and helping people develop a book and write a book. I don't write it. I help them write it. That is at this intersection in the Venn diagram of your life, which is the message you really, really, really want to get across, which is a process to find that. Where your expertise and your credibility is today, and what the market is yearning for, where the market gap is, because we don't, we want to make money off this book. We want to use it. Do you want to use it to get more speaking gigs? Do you want to use it to get a new job? Do you want to use it to show the world that you are not just an expert in healthcare, you're also an expert in energy? I mean, what do you want to use it for, and where is the market for that? And then I help them connect with editors, agents, publishers, et cetera. I don't do really self-publishing. I mean, I do hybrid. I work with hybrid publishers because just to give your audience a little bit of a lesson on that, hybrid publishers in effect bring the best of both worlds. You pay them, but you don't pay them as much. And they're professional public. They come from HarperCollins, McGraw-Hill, Hachette, whatever. And they bring those professional packaging and marketing skills to and they edit the heck out of your book. So you got to be prepared for that.
And you keep your own intellectual content.
Yes. And you also keep 70% of the proceeds, but you are putting up, several $1,000s to for their expertise. It's not free. It's not getting an advance. And I do both. Some people can get a traditional publisher, and some books just would not attract it or don't want to go through the process of doing that.
So if either of those coaching models appeal to you, you can go to your website is
electricladiespodcast.com.
and she's got a wonderful section for just her coaching, and all of her contact information is available on her website. And you are ubiquitous on social media.
I am. Well, and I'll also say that if anybody wants like a 30-minute free coaching session to explore what's going on with them, to go to the website, reach out to me or on Twitter or LinkedIn, but mention that you heard me on the Edge of Every Day, and that'll be your golden ticket, if you will. And then we can set up a time to chat, because I want people to be who they want to be. And by the way, I don't only work with people in the energy space. I mean, I've got a musician client. I've got a lot of my corporate-ish clients are in the ESG area, but sometimes my book coaching clients are not. They can range. So it just it depends on what the messages you want to get across and who you want to be in the world. And what I love about what you're doing is you're emphasizing with the edge of the edginess is allowing people to be the spark, be the catalyst, and not have to worry about bleeping fitting in. And just to pull on that for a second, you mentioned earlier about being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is about being a spark and a catalyst. I mean, when I was at Chrysler, you didn't want me building your engine or knowing how. I mean, my boss said to me, you were so successful because you weren't bogged down by the way everything is done in the car business. And so give yourself permission to be the spark, to be different, and ask any question. There are no stupid questions. And if they're going to roll their eyes at you, then that's not people that you want to hang out with. Okay.
Amen.
There's always going to be somebody in the room who has the same question.
Indeed. So, electricladiespodcast.com. You can find Joan Michelson on Twitter, Insta, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And you can also find Electric Gals Pod as well on, I think, that's Twitter or Insta?
Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, my assistant has gotten us even on TikTok, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's in there yet.
No, I know. I'm soon to get on there myself. You're going to be fabulous on that platform.
I delegate.
No, you're gonna make some great videos for there. I can see it. So I want to thank you, Joan Michelson, so much for joining us and fleshing out all of these concepts with our listeners, myself included. It's been fantastic.
Well, thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for creating a space where people can celebrate their edginess and their creativity and their being who they are. I have a client who likes to say, the universe thought you were a really good idea to be on the planet right now.
Love that.
So embrace that.
Indeed. Amen. And I want to thank all of you who are listening in. You can go to sandrabargman.com. You can go to Amazon, a variety of places to get the original recording of The Edge of Every Day. And remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you again, Joan. Have a great night. Till next Monday. Take good care.
This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure. Under pressure. Under pressure.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.